welcome back, my unstoppable force embodiment. Something absolutely extraordinary just occurred that has everyone experiencing profound strategic helplessness after recognizing you as threat or obstacle to their objectives. Observers conducted exhaustive search for vulnerabilities, countermeasures, or leverage points they could exploit to stop your progress. Yet despite thorough analysis and creative problem solving, they discovered no effective means to halt your advancement, creating frustrated recognition that you've achieved strategic invulnerability where conventional opposition methods prove completely ineffective. This wasn't them casually dismissing you as non-threat or failing to take you seriously enough to mount opposition. This was them actively seeking ways to stop you through systematic analysis of potential vulnerabilities and comprehensive evaluation of available countermeasures, only to discover that every approach they considered either wouldn't work or would backfire, making their thorough search for stopping mechanisms end in complete failure to identify viable opposition strategy. The architects have been monitoring strategic invulnerability and opposition futility phenomena across civilizations for eons, and they've identified what you've achieved as comprehensive defense, strategic immunity, when someone constructs position or approach so thoroughly protected that opponents searching for countermeasures find no exploitable vulnerabilities, making opposition attempts futile because all available strategies either prove ineffective or create backfire effects that strengthen rather than weaken target. Most people have exploitable weaknesses. Their positions contain vulnerabilities that skilled opponents can identify and exploit, making them stoppable through targeted countermeasures that address specific weaknesses their approach contains. But you apparently achieved defensive completeness. Thorough protection against all known attack vectors means opponents conducting systematic vulnerability search find no openings they can exploit, making you strategically immune to conventional opposition methods. Because comprehensive defense eliminates exploitable weaknesses that stopping strategies require. Watch what's happening as observers process their search failure. They experience strategic frustration, investing effort in finding stopping mechanisms, only to discover none exist. Creates intense frustration from recognition that their opposition attempts are futile before they even begin. Some observers are experiencing power helplessness, discovering they cannot stop you despite wanting to create uncomfortable awareness of their limited influence, making them feel powerless against someone who has achieved invulnerability. Their capabilities can't breach. Others are experiencing grudging respect, recognizing the sophistication required to achieve comprehensive defense creates admiration even among opponents who wish they could stop you, because invulnerability demonstrates strategic excellence they must acknowledge. The truly remarkable element is the search thoroughness. They didn't just superficially look for stopping methods, but conducted exhaustive analysis, attempting to find any vulnerability, only to discover your defenses are complete, making their comprehensive search end in total failure, proving invulnerability is genuine rather than them just not trying hard enough. They looked for a way to stop you, found none through demonstrating that comprehensive defense creates strategic immunity, where opponents conducting systematic vulnerability search discover no exploitable weaknesses, making opposition attempts futile because all available countermeasures prove ineffective against thoroughly protected position that eliminates attack vectors conventional stopping strategies require. Now the architects are analyzing what creates comprehensive defense, strategic immunity, and they're identifying what they call multi-layer protection, redundant security. When someone protects position through multiple independent defense mechanisms, where each layer provides backup for others, they achieve robustness, where single vulnerability exploitation cannot compromise entire position, making comprehensive breach nearly impossible. Most defenses are single-layer, People protect positions through one primary mechanism, making them vulnerable if that defense fails because no backup systems exist to maintain protection when primary defense is breached. But you apparently employed defense in depth. Multiple independent protection layers mean that even if opponents find way to breach one defense, they still face additional barriers, making complete vulnerability exploitation require simultaneous breach of all layers, which is exponentially harder than defeating single protection, creating robustness through redundancy. Consider what multi-layer defense requires strategically. You must identify all attack vectors. Comprehensive protection requires recognizing every way opponents might attack, making thorough threat modeling necessary for ensuring no vulnerability remains undefended. Watch what redundant security creates in opposition difficulty. Opponents face compounding barriers. Needing to breach multiple independent defenses simultaneously makes stopping you exponentially harder than if single vulnerability existed, because each layer multiplies difficulty rather than just adding to it. Some studying security architecture recognize that defense in depth is fundamental principle. Cybersecurity, military strategy, and other domains emphasize layered defenses where redundancy creates robustness, making your multi-layer protection consistent with established security practices. Others exploring system resilience note that redundancy does prevent single-point failure. Engineering principles show that backup systems dramatically improve reliability, making your redundant security potentially reflect engineering approach to strategic protection. A few from risk management recognize that diversification reduces vulnerability. Not relying on single defense mechanism means that different attack types require different countermeasures, making comprehensive breach require expertise across multiple domains rather than just one specialty. Some attempting similar comprehensive defense discover resource requirements, trying to protect against all attack vectors through multiple layers requires significant investment, making thorough protection potentially expensive in time, effort, and resources that most people cannot sustain. Others questioning whether defense is truly comprehensive, wondering if you actually protected against all vulnerabilities or if opponents just haven't found weaknesses yet, making assessment of invulnerability potentially premature when creative opposition might discover novel attack vectors your defenses don't address. A few recognizing that overdefense can create rigidity, questioning whether excessive protection focus might reduce adaptability, making comprehensive defense potentially trade invulnerability for flexibility that dynamic situations require. The architects observe that multi-layer protection, redundant security is what created your strategic immunity. Multiple independent defense mechanisms provide backup. Most defenses are single layer. Your protection has depth, and employing defense in depth where each vulnerability is protected by multiple independent mechanisms means opponents must breach all layers simultaneously to exploit weaknesses, making comprehensive vulnerability exploitation exponentially harder than defeating single protection, creating robustness through redundancy that makes stopping you nearly impossible, because even if opponents find way to breach one defense, they still face additional barriers requiring them to defeat multiple independent protections simultaneously, which few opponents possess capability to achieve, making your layered approach create practical invulnerability through compounding difficulty that redundant security provides. Something powerful is spreading among observers now, what the architects call opposition futility recognition, acceptance necessity. People who searched for stopping mechanisms and found none are discovering that accepting your unstoppability is more rational than continuing futile opposition, creating strategic shift where former opponents pivot from trying to stop you to adapting to unstoppable reality. Most opposition is persistent. People continue fighting, even when losing, believing that sustained effort will eventually succeed, making them maintain resistance despite evidence suggesting futility. But your demonstrated invulnerability forces rationality threshold. Opponents whose exhaustive search found no stopping mechanisms are recognizing that continuing opposition wastes resources on impossible tasks, making acceptance and adaptation more rational than futile resistance, creating strategic pivot from opposition to accommodation. Watch what futility recognition creates in opponent behavior. Some abandon opposition entirely, accepting they cannot stop you makes them cease. Resistance attempts redirecting energy toward objectives that don't require stopping you, since that's proven impossible. Others shift to damage limitation, recognizing they cannot prevent your success makes them focus on minimizing negative consequences for themselves rather than trying to stop you, which they now understand. Futile. A few attempt alliance building, understanding they cannot oppose you successfully makes them consider whether cooperating might be preferable to futile resistance, attempting to gain benefits from inevitable success rather than suffering costs of failed opposition. Some studying strategic adaptation recognize that accepting reality is rational. Continuing impossible fights wastes resources, making pragmatic pivot to acceptance more intelligent than idealistic persistence in futile opposition that cannot succeed. Others exploring sunk cost fallacy note that recognizing futility prevents escalation. Some opponents continue fighting to justify past investments, making futility recognition potentially help them avoid throwing good money after bad through accepting that previous opposition efforts were wasted rather than escalating commitment. A few questioning whether acceptance is premature, wondering if opponents are giving up too easily when creative solutions might still exist, making futility recognition potentially reflect insufficient effort rather than genuine impossibility. Some experiencing relief from opposition and feel freed, recognizing they don't have to keep fighting. Impossible battle creates psychological relief from ending exhausting conflict they were destined to lose anyway, making acceptance provide comfort despite representing strategic defeat. Others experiencing resentment about forced acceptance feel bitter, having to accommodate your success. When they wanted to stop, you creates lingering hostility even as they rationally recognize opposition is futile, making their acceptance reluctant rather than willing. The architects observe that opposition futility recognition, acceptance necessity, reveals that your demonstrated invulnerability forced rational pivot. Continuing impossible opposition wastes resources, most persist despite futility. Your invulnerability forced acceptance, and opponents whose exhaustive search found no stopping mechanisms are recognizing that adapting to unstoppable reality is more rational than maintaining futile resistance, creating strategic shift from opposition to accommodation, where former adversaries pivot from trying to stop you to minimizing damage or seeking benefits from inevitable success. Because continuing fight they cannot win wastes resources on impossible task, making acceptance and adaptation more intelligent than idealistic persistence in futile opposition that comprehensive defense has rendered completely ineffective, forcing pragmatic recognition that some battles cannot be won, requiring strategic pivot to reality-based approaches. Now the architects are revealing what your invulnerability actually demonstrates. You apparently possess what they call asymmetric advantage, disproportionate positioning, where you've achieved strategic position so favorable that opponents would need resources or capabilities vastly exceeding yours to successfully oppose, creating fundamental imbalance that makes stopping you impossible for actors with comparable resources. Most competition is symmetric. Opponents have similar capabilities, making contests determined by execution quality or effort levels where better performance wins but victory remains possible for both sides. But your position apparently achieved asymmetry. Structural advantages mean that even if opponents execute perfectly and apply maximum effort, they still cannot overcome positional superiority you possess, making competition fundamentally unbalanced, where stopping you would require resources or capabilities so vastly superior that no available opponent possesses them. Consider what asymmetric advantage requires strategically. You must have positional superiority. Achieving favorable position that opponents cannot match creates structural advantage that execution quality alone cannot overcome, making strategic positioning as important as tactical execution. Watch what disproportionate positioning creates in competitive dynamics. Opponents face impossible odds. Needing vastly superior resources just to compete equally means that comparable opponents cannot win regardless of effort quality, making your position create insurmountable advantage. Some studying competitive strategy recognize that positioning beats execution. Business and military strategy show that favorable position can overcome superior opponent capabilities, making your asymmetric advantage potentially reflect strategic wisdom about importance of positioning over tactics. Others exploring power asymmetry note that structural advantages do dominate. Research on competition shows that certain positions provide inherent advantages that effort cannot overcome, making your disproportionate positioning consistent with documented cases where position determines outcomes more than capability levels. A few from game theory recognize that first-mover advantages can be insurmountable. Certain games have positions where initial advantage cannot be overcome, making your asymmetric positioning potentially reflect game structure where early positioning creates permanent advantage. Some attempting to achieve similar positioning discover difficulty. Trying to create asymmetric advantage requires foresight and capability most lack, making disproportionate positioning rare achievement that cannot be easily replicated. Others questioning whether advantage is permanent, wondering if your asymmetric position might be vulnerable to paradigm shifts that change game rules, making current invulnerability potentially temporary when innovative opponents change competition structure. A few recognizing that you might have had advantages, questioning whether achieving favorable position required resources or circumstances others lacked, making asymmetric positioning potentially privilege rather than just strategic skill accessible to anyone. The architects observe that asymmetric advantage, disproportionate positioning, is what makes stopping you impossible. Structural superiority requires vastly greater resources to oppose. Most competition is symmetric. Your position is asymmetric, and achieving strategic position so favorable that opponents would need capabilities vastly exceeding theirs to successfully challenge creates fundamental imbalance, making opposition futility not just about your defensive capabilities but about structural advantages where even perfect execution by comparable opponents cannot overcome positional superiority you possess, making stopping you require resources or capabilities no available opponent has, creating practical invulnerability through disproportionate positioning that makes competition fundamentally unbalanced in your favor, where symmetric opponents face impossible odds regardless of effort quality they apply, making your strategic position itself the source of unstoppability that exhaustive search for vulnerabilities cannot address, because problem isn't exploitable weakness but insurmountable structural advantage. The architects are now analyzing psychological dimension of your invulnerability. Opponents are experiencing what they call learned helplessness, strategic demoralization, where repeated failure to find stopping mechanisms creates psychological condition where they stop trying to oppose even when opportunities might exist, because exhaustive search failure has conditioned expectation that opposition is futile. Most opposition maintains hope. People continue fighting, believing success remains possible, making them persist through setbacks because they think next attempt might work. But your demonstrated invulnerability apparently created hopelessness conditioning at opponents whose comprehensive search found no vulnerabilities have learned that stopping you is impossible, making them cease opposition attempts, not just because rational analysis suggests futility, but because psychological conditioning from repeated failure has created learned helplessness where they've internalized belief that resistance is pointless. Watch what learned helplessness creates in opponent psychology. Some stop trying entirely. Psychological conditioning from search failure makes them cease opposition attempts, even in situations where resistance might actually work, because learned helplessness generalizes beyond specific context. Others experience depression symptoms. Repeated failure, creating sense of powerlessness, can produce clinical depression features where opponents feel generally hopeless beyond just specific opposition to you, making psychological impact extend beyond strategic domain. A few develop avoidance behaviors. Wanting to escape repeated failure feeling makes them avoid situations where they might need to oppose you, even when avoidance creates costs, because psychological discomfort from confronting invulnerability outweighs rational considerations. Some studying learned helplessness recognize that conditioning does create generalized passivity. Research shows that inescapable negative outcomes produce psychological state where subjects stop trying, even when escape becomes possible, making your opponent's demoralization potentially reflect documented psychological phenomenon. Others exploring resilience factors note that some people resist learned helplessness. Individual differences in psychological resilience mean not all opponents will develop helplessness conditioning, making your invulnerability affect different opponents differently based on psychological factors. A few questioning whether helplessness is appropriate, wondering if opponents' cessation of opposition reflects rational acceptance versus pathological passivity, making assessment of whether learned helplessness is adaptive response or maladaptive conditioning difficult to determine. Some experiencing liberation from opposition pressure feel relief. Psychological conditioning, making resistance seem futile, removes pressure to keep fighting, creating paradoxical relief from learned helplessness despite it representing psychological defeat. Others attempting to overcome learned helplessness struggle psychologically, recognizing their passivity is conditioned response doesn't automatically restore active opposition because psychological patterns resist conscious override, making recovery from learned helplessness difficult even when intellectually understanding the dynamic. The architects observe that learned helplessness, strategic demoralization reveals that your invulnerability created psychological conditioning. Repeated search failure taught that opposition is futile. Most opposition maintains hope. Your imperviousness created helplessness, and opponents whose exhaustive efforts found no stopping mechanisms have developed psychological condition where they've internalized belief that resistance is pointless, making them cease opposition attempts not just from rational calculation but from learned helplessness, conditioning that repeated failure has produced, creating strategic demoralization that extends beyond specific opposition to you, affecting their general sense of agency, and producing passivity that might persist even in contexts where resistance could work because psychological conditioning from confronting your invulnerability has taught them that fighting is futile. Now something's emerging that the architects call invulnerability mystique, authority amplification. Observers who discovered they cannot stop you are attributing almost supernatural qualities to your capabilities, creating perception that exceeds actual invulnerability where mysterious aura around your unstoppability amplifies authority. beyond what objective analysis would justify. Most invulnerability is understood. When people cannot defeat opponent, they understand why, based on specific advantages opponent possesses, making their inability feel explainable and limited. But your comprehensive defense apparently created mystique. Opponent's inability to identify specific vulnerabilities despite thorough search makes your invulnerability seem mysterious rather than explainable, creating perception that you possess almost magical protection that rational analysis cannot fully understand, amplifying your authority beyond what objective capabilities alone would create. Watch what mystique creation creates in perception dynamics. Some attribute supernatural qualities, unable to explain invulnerability through normal analysis, makes observers hypothesize that you possess special powers or unusual protections that ordinary people lack, creating mythologized perception. Others experience intimidation, amplification. Mysterious invulnerability is more intimidating than understood advantage, because inability to comprehend protection mechanisms creates unlimited threat perception, where opponents cannot assess your actual limits. A few develop superstitious beliefs. Incomprehensible invulnerability leads some to develop quasi-magical thinking about your capabilities, where they attribute powers beyond what rational analysis supports, because mystique fills explanation gaps. Some studying authority sources recognize that mystery does amplify power. Research shows that incomprehensible capabilities create greater influence than understood advantages, making your mystique potentially enhance authority beyond objective capabilities through perception effects. Others exploring charisma components note that inscrutability does attract leadership. Research shows that leaders who remain somewhat mysterious command more fascination than completely transparent figures, making your invulnerability mystique potentially enhance attractiveness and authority. A few questioning whether mystique is deserved, wondering if your invulnerability is actually mysterious, or if opponents are creating artificial mystique through lazy analysis, making supernatural attributions potentially reflect their confusion rather than your actual unusualness. Some experiencing mystique fascination feel drawn. Incomprehensible invulnerability creates curiosity and attraction, making them want to understand or be near someone who possesses mysterious qualities that rational analysis cannot fully explain. Others resenting mistake attribution feel frustrated. Believing supernatural qualities are being wrongly attributed makes them want to demystify your invulnerability through finding rational explanation that reduce magical perception to understandable advantages. The architects observe that invulnerability mystique authority amplification reveals that your unexplainable imperviousness created perception effects. Inability to identify vulnerabilities creates mystery. Most invulnerability is understood. Yours seems supernatural, and opponents whose thorough search failed to explain your protection mechanisms are developing mystique perception, where your invulnerability seems mysterious rather than just strong, creating authority amplification beyond what objective capabilities alone would justify, because incomprehensible protection generates unlimited threat perception and quasi-magical attributions that enhance influence through perception effects, where mystery itself becomes power source, amplifying authority beyond what rational analysis of actual capabilities would support, making your strategic immunity create not just practical invulnerability, but also psychological mystique that magnifies perceived power through opponents' inability to comprehend protection mechanisms despite exhaustive analysis attempts.